Welcome, everyone, to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Creator Convo. I'm Noel Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Good evening, everyone. This is Bob. So delighted to have you all with us this evening in Timeless Time. Some are watching over on Facebook. Some are going to watch in the archives of the Co-Creators Convergence website on another day, but it's really all the same time because this is information that we all really need to have and get us thinking and in action. Judah, we are so blessed to have you with us this evening. Very excited to hear about the book, all that it teaches us and all that it challenges us to take step forward and do for our planet and for humanity. Barbara will be very happy to watch this going on tonight. Thank you for being with us.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, Judah. And Judah has been with us at one of the Co-Creators Convergence in Colorado. And we'll learn more about, I'm going to do a formal introduction of our friend Judah Fried in just a moment, but I want to welcome our national and international guests to this call. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence, and then we'll come back and Judah is offering a centering, and then he'll talk about his book. And I think his book and the information he's bringing is so important for these times. So if you just will please stand by, let's hear about the Co-Creators Convergence and what we got coming up. So that is a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. And now I want to tell you about our friend Judah Fried. Pretty amazing guy. So he is a seasoned journalist and the award-winning author or editor of 15 books. A fourth-generation Coloradoan, that means he lives in Colorado, living on the homeland of the Arapaho and the Ute. Since 1976, he's worked a decade as a reorder or editor for Denver newspapers, 2 decades for top media trade magazine in the USA and Europe, a decade editing publications in Kauai, and today he covers Colorado courts for the, I think it's for the, let's see, for the National News
You only
Service.
heard it once.
Okay.
Well, it is a national news service, yes.
National News Service. So he's written for the Huffington Post, The Sun, the European Press Network, Financial Times, Leaps, and others. His books have won 3 Nautilus Awards, 4 Cover Visionary Awards, an Eric Hoffer Award, a Benjamin Franklin Award, and a nomination for the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. Wow. He's also served on the National...
And I can add that recently the Coalition of Visionary Resources cover gave me gold awards for Earth justice, and rising to the challenge, which is my favorite.
Well, I want to hear more about that, but I got more to brag about you, Judah. So sit tight.
Okay.
Okay. She met our mentor, teacher, friend, Barbara Marx Hubbard at her Boulder, Colorado campaign stop when she ran for vice president. And that was in 1984. And their first real conversation was when he served as press room aide for John Denver's annual Choices for the Future symposium in Aspen. Shortly before Barbara passed, she generously wrote an endorsement blurb for the first edition of the book he's going to be talking about tonight. She said, Judah Freed has taken the gauntlet from Thomas Paine and other great innovators of democracy to guide us towards the evolution of democracy itself. Making Global Sense is a vital and wonderful book, well written and inspired by the very same passion that founded this country and can carry the world into the next era of evolution. And that's from Barbara Marx Hubbard, Conscious Evolution. So, boy, that's a pretty high recommendation. You must have been thrilled with that endorsement, Judah. Yeah.
Blessing.
Yes.
And I bless the friends that connected us.
Very good. And like I said, I know there's people that are watching this call and are on this call who haven't attended Co-Creators Convergence annual gathering yet. But this year we're having our 11th annual. It's going to be October 6th to the 11th, and it's going to be at the mountain outside of Asheville, North Carolina. So there's still time to register and come. You can go to cocreatorsconvergence.com/2024 and get all the details. So I'm sorry you're not going to make it this year, Judah, but that's how we met, was at one of these CCCs. So you're a veteran. How could it be better than that?
I will be there at one point.
Excellent.
I will be there again.
Yay. Well, right now, I'm going to turn it over to Judah. He's going to do a centering for us, and then he is going to do a slide show presentation about his book. I'm really looking forward to the wisdom. And this is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts. I'm part of the Founding Mothers Movement. I'm also part of the League of Women Voters. I'm also a sacred activist, both Bob and I both. So we're really looking for some positive solutions to the problems of the planet at this time. So without any further ado, my friend, Judah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I need to say a short preamble and then do the opening meditation. People who are interested in spirituality and personal growth tend to disdain politics. People in politics tend to disdain spirituality and personal growth. My goal is to bridge these gaps because that's really about one of the most effective things we can do to solve our world problems, in my belief. So, take a breath. Find your center. Engage your visualization skills. And see a shaft of light running through you and up into whatever you see as being the sky above. It's a shaft of, you might see it as white light, might have color, but it's just a shaft, a pillar of light between you and the heavens. And it connects you to the earth, connects you to the sky, and all that's beyond. Once you have that established, imagine that there's an arc of light that runs from you to everyone else on this call. And it creates a light bridge or a webbing or a net among us all. So we are interactive and we are sharing this sacred space. Now imagine those pillars of light are sending out arcs to all the people in your network, all the people that you know. Imagine yourself, that network spreading around the planet and connecting all the global thinkers on earth, whether they're spiritual or secular. Imagine us all being connected to one effective field of energy and activism. Now just bathe in that for a moment. Okay, bring yourself back to your center. You can, your pillar of light lives with you always, of course, but you can disconnect it from the call if you wish, or leave yourself active. And bring yourself ready, and when your eyes are open, come present. Okay, so the brief description of making global sense. The subtitle is Grounded Hope for Democracy in the Earth, inspired by Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And I'll talk more about Paine. It is, it's basically, I've taken the ideas and ideals of the 18th century Enlightenment and revived them for our use in the for evolution in the 21st century, for ascension, creating a sustainable world, whatever language you want to use for that. But for 21st century enlightenment is what I'm seeking. And the goal is to give people a framework to understand what's at stake in the current crises, and a way to understand how powerful we are. The core premise of the book is that we're all deeply, powerfully, subtly, invisibly, and visibly interconnected, intertwined, interactive. We're all one. It's all one, the Gaia concept, everything, all the languages there are for this global sensibility of us being interconnected, and basically awareness of our oneness is what I'm talking about, is this global sensibility. And if we have that, my belief is that we'll behave ourselves much better than we do now. There's always going to be wayward folks, but they can only get away with what we'll let them get away with. So because we are innately powerful, naturally powerful, I'm encouraging us to recognize our spiritual and social and cultural and relationships power, and use it mindfully. So what I want to do is I want to run through the key ideas in the book. And by the time I've gone through the front page of my webpage, you'll have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, and if you agree with Noel about it, that it matters. And I do apologize for the roughness of my voice. I've been dealing with cancer since 2016. I mean, it was clear most of the time, but it's resurfaced lately, and this is what this is Judah Fried on on medication for cancer. So while I bring this up, I want to do an audiobook next, but would you be willing to listen to this voice for the entire length of time of a book? I think I need to find an ally. Okay, here we go, share screen. Okay, that's the screen I want to be on. Okay, so this is the website. I've been building websites for a while. So that's what you get to at the beginning, and this, in many respects, is the least important, because I feel like the book was written through me more than from me, but I sure played a role. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so I'm grateful for any recognition, and mainly just so you can popularize the book. That's that's the catchphrase of the book right there, because we do have that power. Thomas Paine said we have the power to build the world anew, and we do because of our global interactivity. So, so these are the big ideas in the book. And before I share this, I need to tell you a little bit of frame. The essays in the book are interwoven with a memoir, my memoir, that tells the story of me behind the ideas in the book. In my early 20s, I joined a cult, the Unification Church. They called the Moonies. And I was a loyal Moonie for about 3 years. And I would chastise myself if I wasn't good and true to the cause. As a consequence of that, I really understood once I was able to run away, but encouragement. I discovered that what was going on with me was what I call alpha male rule and authority addiction. This addiction that most of us have, I believe it's generational, to really pay attention to authority and power outside of ourselves. External locus of control is referred to. But part of that, it focuses on alpha male rule, which is this whole idea that men have any right or duty to rule women and the world. That's a false belief in my judgment. But it's been passed down from generation to generation as part of our legacy of authority addiction. And we don't see it's happening because for all sorts of reasons, we've split our perceptions. We've made it so, we live in that proverbial denial river. And, some examples of that split perceptions are, believing a lie is the truth or believing an opinion is a fact. Those are all examples of split perceptions because you're not seeing the whole, or we're not seeing the whole, or I'm not seeing the whole. And so that's the core issue as I see that is confronting our world. We see it showing up in the threats to democracy mostly, and we're seeing it in the compulsion for wealth and power that has corrupted the earth and leaving us in the midst of what's bound to be a couple decades before we stabilize, probably longer than that, probably through the end of the century, before the climate stabilizes, if it does. And whether or not it's sustainable for us depends on whether or not we're active now. I'm presuming you already know this. So I'm saying that this is what's in our way. This is how really we've created the mess that we're in. And so I believe it's our responsibility to resolve it ourselves. It's not up to a king or a master to do this for it. Right now, I'm very concerned that in the USA, there's a high likelihood that we're going to elect a king rather than taking on the duty of governing ourselves. And that's an old habit. We like saviors rather than saving ourselves. So these are what I see as the ways to resolve the problem. First is mindful self-rule. And the idea is that we're responsible for ourselves and in all aspects, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, that we're autonomous, that we feel free to be our own selves, not as society would have us be, but whoever we truly are. And with a very solid warning about the authority addiction of going along with the crowd so you feel accepted, or I feel accepted. That's how I got roped into the cult. So it's really being mindful and ruling oneself. And if I know that I'm connected to everything, it makes it much, much easier to do that. If I feel alone and isolated with that split perception, then I feel powerless, and it's very hard for me to govern myself. And I'm still learning how to do it. I'm better than I used to be. So that's the internal locus of control. And then it's applying that in the outer world. So it's taking that global sensibility inside the self that governs our individual behavior and then moving that into how we interact with others in relationships and in our communities and our society and our planet and with commerce and everything that we do. All that comes under the heading of personal democracy. I'm going to sip. And some examples of that include physically, like you in the physical world. You respect other people's boundaries, or we respect other people's boundaries, so that my body belongs to me, not you, and your body belongs to you, and no one can touch you without permission, right? So that's a primal boundary of understanding that people also have rights and responsibilities and are autonomous. Letting people be autonomous, and we don't violate other people's rights. In many respects, I'm libertarian, maybe a progressive libertarian, if I can apply a label. But I'm more the self-reliance libertarian that says that I want to rely on me for things, and I don't codependently rely on other people to be able to take care of myself. Now, that doesn't mean I don't ask for help, especially now with the cancer. But that's choice, not habit. If the authority addiction is ruling our behaviors with other people, then we're not a choice, or I'm not a choice when I do that. So that's part of personal democracy. Another element of it is that, for example, we choose in our community to get engaged in a productive way. I mean, anybody can complain without fixing. It's not useful. I would like us to consider the value of becoming actually engaged in your community. Volunteer, be involved, give something beyond yourself, care about something beyond oneself is extremely empowering, as long as you guard against the authority addiction of letting it take over. So that's like, is there a community organization? Is there a school in your neighborhood? Is there there's election season? Are you going out and working for the candidate that you prefer? Those are choices that we can use to get involved. And if we take that kind of simple grassroots activism and community activism and just community participation, going to meetings, lobbying officials in business and government, lobbying, even lobbying nonprofits, they need lobbying too. But speaking up for what we care about, that is powerful. And I don't know if you realize this, but maybe the people who are in power have maximed that only about 20% of the people who actually feel strongly about something are speaking up about it, no matter what it may be. That means that 80% feel that way but don't speak up. Now we can let that 20% speak for us, but I'm saying that we need a louder voice, a global sensibility to, I want a world that makes global sense to me and our future generations. And so I talk about the global sense movement as a developing out of those two. I'm going to leapfrog. And this is already happening. I document there's about a billion, at least a billion, 1 to 2 billion people on the planet that have this global sensibility and are living from that place of awareness, of oneness. Some of the vectors for pinning that down include there's an organization called Natural Marketing Institute. They did a research study into a term that's no longer popular, but it's LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. And they determined that about 22 to 24% of the adult US population are global thinkers or are LOHAS consumers. They would say that they read package labels, they eat natural and organic foods. We avoid packaging with wasteful packaging. We're mindful about what we read product labels for certain ingredients we won't put in our bodies. And So about 24% of us have that awareness, and it springs from that sense of oneness and holism. Now then there are about 800,000 in the USA right now. Then there's a secondary group of what they call they've changed the term, but it's a secondary group of people that are sort of like they're global thinkers, but they don't walk their talk as often, and it's fine. But they're actually a slight percentage more. So actually, yes. So it's 22% are the core group of global thinkers, and 24% are the outside circle. And then the rest are people that either are unaware of our oneness, or they don't even think about it. Doesn't even cross the radar. So that is that movement is happening now. That's just one of about I track about. Well, initially in the first edition of the book, I tracked about 13 vectors, and then after the cancer, when I went to do an update, it was beyond my ability to do. And if anyone wants to help, I'm open to some research help. But I pared it down to enough to make the case in the book. But I figured that we represent at best 20% of the population. Anywhere from 10% to 20% of the global population of 8 billion. That's enough to tip the scale if we get vocal enough and influence hearts and minds fairly without becoming authority addicts and forcing people to think the way we do. That's the opposite of mindful self-rule. So that's the core of the book. Now let me talk a little bit about direct republics. Pain at the end of common sense, and this book is modeled on common sense. I follow his structure and logic, as I'll show you in a moment. He proposes that America that the colonies bond into a country and have a representative republic. And he figured that humans were, at least not here, were ready for direct democracies where, it's like a consensus. People have one person, one vote. They decide everything in mass assembly. And that's very difficult. And it's unlikely to happen anytime in our lifetimes. My work in a small organization, and I know organizations where it does, but in a larger scale, it's very hard. So as an interim step towards that, maybe someday, I'm proposing direct republics, and I won't get into much of it now, but just to say that I follow Paine's outline fairly closely, lay out a series of policies such as publicly funded elections and other principles, and no immunity while in office, for crimes while in office, and term limits on judges, universal suffrage, adult suffrage, and those are some of the principles of a direct republic. And so I go through Paine's plan for getting it organized and conducting it, and I suggest some ways that we could actually do it if we ever have the political will to try it. May never happen, but if we ever do, this piece is there as an archive. I'm a Bucky Fuller fan, and he talked a lot about archives, creating archives. The geodesic dome is an archive that people can refer to and build from and on. So the common sense is divided into 4 parts, and you can't see the screen very clearly, but these are based on his 4 parts, and those are the chapters in each part. And part 1 is the longest, part 2 and 3 are the shortest, and then part 4. I want to talk about especially this global sensibility and the global sense movement. Well, I already did. So, but when we split our perceptions, we can easily just do insane, crazy, absurd, and atrocious things like like invading other countries and putting people in prison camps and raping children. If we see the raw global, we can't behave that way, can we? So, so this talks about our whole notion of authority addiction, how it expresses through the money and power that's causing, I went through a whole series of some of the problems. And the same, I follow very closely what Paine said was the problem with monarchy and hereditary succession. And here I'm going through and calling it monarchy, calling it alpha male rule and authority addiction. But that's, I'm following his ideas very closely. And just as he ran through the clear and present dangers and the hazards if the American colonists didn't rebel, I'm talking about what happens if we don't evolve. And then a bit of a necessary pep talk the same way Paine did, and really follow his language there pretty closely. And then I talk about inner and outer, personal and social transformation. And the phrase, for those of you who go back, comes from the Aquarian Conspiracy, a handbook for personal and social transformation. Bring some smiles, yeah. The book is woven with little Easter eggs like that. Cultural literacy tidbits. I talk a lot about gender equality. I'm going to dwell on that for a moment. I am of the firm conviction that men are damaged by alpha male rule. And this comes from 40 years plus in the men's movement. And early fan of Herb Goldberg and others who talk about the hazards of being male. And there is there's a male-female dynamic that is based on the whole idea that men have a right to be able to own their seed, and that's nonsense. I know it shows up in nature a lot, but it's time that we outgrow it. Men do not have any right to control women's wombs. It doesn't belong to us. It's not our body. If we want to be able to control the birth, then figure out how to mutate ourselves so we can do it ourselves. There is, so if we have genuine gender equality, which is based on the recognition that everything is made out of light, and because everything is light in all its many expressions, that means everything is innately equal to everything else, or each individual expression of light is innately equal to every other expression of light, naturally. That's the core of a global sensibility, is that sense of unity and equality at the core of everything. And if we know that, that changes how we relate to other people, both in terms of gender identity, and I think we can pivot that big one. It's as big, maybe bigger than the racial issues, but I'm a white male. I know that my limitations. I can't speak really beyond my experience with any other than empathy. I can't speak to it. But I can tell you that there's a lot of new men evolving on the planet. It's a growing movement. It's been around, it's a couple of centuries behind the women's movement, folks. And we're just now starting to catch up. It's going to take us a while. Alpha male rule is pushing back really hard, especially from the far right that wants to, think it's their divine right and duty to control over the birth canal. There are a lot of new men in a lot of organizations all around the planet. I have a long list to show how substantial it is, but there's 2 websites you can go to research it, just to see. I'm not making this stuff up. One is xy.com. That's on the XY chromosome. It's out of Australia, and this is an international movement. And the other one is more of an old school website, but it's a wonderful resource. It's called Men's Stuff. I think it's .com, might be .org, but both of these have really detailed resources. There's a bibliography there, I think something like 70,000 works that are available to be read, links to them. Then the other website I strongly, heartily endorse is what else in Michael's blank? It's men's stories that'll come to me, but just search for new men on the web. You try using that phrase, or try using men's support groups or men's support circles. These are the good ones, mind you, not the ones that are just excuses for quote unquote male bonding. The same old bets and women bashing, and that's not. That's just supporting men being as they used to be. So this is the big framework for the book right there. And you can see a little closer how it follows the structure. I'll leave it up long if you glance through it. And my goal is to just lay out how finally we do have the actual ability. This is Paine's last section, where he talked about our ability to change the world. Paine had said on their ability to have a revolution. He went through like how many warships it would take, how to fund the campaign. He was one of the first people to put forth the idea that went through actually Franklin to who was his ally to get funding from France. That was among his ideas. Well, actually, Paine already knew. Actually, Jefferson already knew because he was so connected to France. But he runs through the whole system of how to win the revolution, and he proves that they have the capability to do it. So here I go through our whole ability to wage a global campaign for evolution, a peaceful global campaign for evolution that respects people's rights to disagree and just trust that in time it'll work out. Paine said, time makes more converts than reason. I agree with him completely. Then why Thomas Paine? I'll just let you read the website, but just a brief, short overview of his biography. He was born, I'll put it up there. He was born in 37 and died in 1809. He was considered to be the most influential figure in the American Revolution, and he's the least credited. There is no statue to him in Washington, D.C., although there is a bill passed. Now they just need to find a location for it. And if you want to support that, it's the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. And then his legacy has been preserved since the 1800s by the Thomas Paine National Historical Association. And, matter of fact, I'm editor of the Beacon for them. So after the revolution, he went to France. And there was a phrase, there was one of the saying about him, the sword of Washington would have been wielded in vain had it not been for the pen of Paine, or close to that in language, highly influential. Then he went to France and he wrote another book called Rights of Man, which defended the ideals of the French Revolution. He did not defend its practices. In fact, he was opposed to the capital punishment of the king. He thought that he should be tried and, for crimes against the people, but he did not want him executed. He was against violence of that sort. So therefore the Reign of Terror put him in prison, where he got very ill, nearly died. There's a story about how he escaped death, but it can't be proved, but it's apocryphal. How the X mark was put on the inside, his open door. His door was open because he was so ill, so he could get ventilation. And so the person who put an X on the door put it on the inside of the door so the door was closed. And they came by the next morning to take those people to the guillotine that had an X on the door. He got spared. True, I don't know. It's a good story, though, I must say. So then he finally got released when Adams got defeated. Adams denied paying, Adams and the Federalists denied paying any recognition as an American citizen. And they let him rot in prison and get sick. And he finally, when Jefferson came in, Payne was finally brought back to the U.S. by Jefferson in 1802. And then the Federalists in New Rochelle, where he owned a farm, that was given to him by New York. His tenants lived there mostly. He lived there, and then when the New Rochelle Federalists wouldn't let him vote, he moved down to Greenwich Village and died there in 1809. And in fact, the location, the building is still there. And and the Quakers, his parents, one was one was a Quaker and the other one was an Episcopalian. And the Quakers would not let him be buried in their churchyard. So he was buried on the farm. And English opponent, strong, vile, virulent opponent, had a recant and dug up Payne's bones and took him to England with the idea of a grand memorial. All that's left today is Payne's jawbone. Naturally, no one in England would allow a memorial to Thomas Paine. So anyway, his Thomas Paine National Historical Association is located on that property, and that's pretty well that. Oh, it's the ebook is just now about to be released any day now, so probably within a week the ebook will be available. But there's a hardcover and a paperback, and I think. Let me stop sharing. So that's the full deal, full Megillah.
Thank you, Judah. That was a lot of information that you covered. I appreciate that. Now, I don't want to interrupt. If you have more to say, I don't know if you wanted to open up.
I'd love to interact.
Like to interact. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm going to invite.
Since we're in an interactive universe, let's interact.
Okay. I'll add a few spotlights here. And
let me start by making sure the couple of references you made, because we're going to want to include them in this recording for those on another time zone. You mentioned men's stuff. I just want to make sure this is the website that you're talking about.
Men's stuff, that's it.
Okay.
Very old school site.
Okay. And the other one, you said xy.com. XY, okay. XY online.
Online.net.
Net.
Thank you.
I got it. Okay.
I
Good
have
to see you.
a comment question.
Real
Yeah.
life here.
Thanks.
I have a comment question is that I see a lot of movements and things that want to be global, but they are very Americentric. They're really looking at everything through the American point of view. How do we get that to translate? Because we are all interconnected and the shift needs to be for all of us. So I didn't know if you want to comment.
I'm not sure that's an accurate. I'm not sure that's 100% accurate perception about how much you expose to stuff in Europe, for example.
How much what? I'm sorry?
A lot of global European activities.
I'm not
European
that
is very active in
European
global thinking.
activities.
I'm sorry?
I said, I'm not up on European activities. I know something about
Yeah, well, that's
it,
probably
not
why
very
what you're
much.
seeing is Americentric. There's a lot of global stuff going on in Europe. Parts of South America have some stuff going on. Like one of the largest men's movement organizations, for example, is in South America. Institute, I'm probably going to say it wrong. Institute Promudio. It talks a lot about new masculinities, for example. There are, but I've just on the web, just on Facebook, I'm in a number of groups that are very global. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well,
An interesting example, for example, is I'm probably going to say it wrong. I think it's Global 21 or something very close to that. That's based in the UK. It has international programs. So there's a lot of global.
yeah, I'm not denying there isn't, global, but I'm saying, what I've heard tonight really sounds like it's coming. It doesn't sound as global as it could be. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, but I haven't read the book, so I shouldn't say that.
Well,
and I see Ramel is dying to get
fault
into
of
the
me rather than
conversation.
a fault of the book. If that's the case, if it sounds like that, because the book is filled with global examples of every concept presented. There's global examples of it.
Oh, wonderful.
The section that, for example, talks about the status of democracy in the world goes through, all the different, not all, but it covers 2 global reports and this, the status of democracy, full, partial, flawed, authoritarian countries around the world, and identifies them by name. Not all, but
awesome.
But the major ones, and at least the ones where this book is likely to get read. So, the other way this book is the principles here are global. Yeah. Now I acknowledge that I have a cultural bias for North America. Okay. So the stuff I'm talking about is universal. And matter of fact, there's a section in the appendices that talks about author bias.
You covered that well. Very good. Well, I'd like to invite our international guests to see if they'd like to, from Pakistan, see if they'd like to comment or ask a question.
Please do.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Yes, Brother Jordan, it's very nice for talking to you for your sharing and your books, and you're looking like very nice and speak very well. That's very energetic for us, and we had lots of learn. And it's a very pleasure for me and Noreen. Today we joined your meeting in this meeting, and we learned lots of. So that's very nice, and we are very happy for that. But here is the start on the morning, and it's very nice for you, and thanks for Sister Noel, because every time she's remembering for us in these energetic programs and meetings. So that's why we both lots of learn in our working for your expertise and your good people. So that's very nice. Thank you very much for. Yeah.
Ramel, how would you describe the Pakistani government?
Sorry?
How would you describe the Pakistani government? Is it a voting? Is it a democracy? Is that? Do you feel there's a men's movement there? Or do you feel there's still a gender gap in your country?
Yeah, Pakistani government is doing working is well, but Pakistani government probably here is lots of communities here in Pakistan, especially for minorities and Christians, Hindus, and Sikh is live in Pakistan. So that's why government facilitate lots of good ways. So that's why Pakistani government doing great work, but we are struggling in Pakistan because the global problems are all over the world. So Pakistan are also facing lots of problems. lots of problems to other countries. Yeah.
Ramal, do you feel, if I mispronounced, I apologize. Do you feel that your vote is counted?
Sorry. Sorry.
Is
I
your
cannot.
vote when you vote? Do you vote? Are you able to vote?
Yeah. We have vote.
Is your voting counted? Is it legitimately? Is it honored? In many countries
Yeah.
around the world, people vote, but it's ceremonial. The results are fixed. Do you feel
Mm.
that your vote counts?
Mhm. Yeah. We are.
Where I think we are also work in the Pakistan for the voter education
Yeah.
and importance of the vote.
So you do a lot of voter education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These two are amazing
Ah,
volunteers. They do a lot of work for communities. So
Yes.
my intuition led to the right question.
yes, you did. So it doesn't surprise me what, they do so much. So voter education, they've done, you've done a medical clinic recently or supported that for transgender rights.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We are also doing.
Mhm.
Especially we work for the minorities because organizations and our organization goals is to promote for our these peoples. They are struggling and they are facing lots of problems in Pakistan. So that's what our organization CMS Pakistan work for minorities as and they are a sport that these peoples they are not work and they are not approached to the government to help for the future working, especially for the transgenders, because in Pakistan, transgenders peoples are not safe and not positively response to the government resources. So that's why me and Noreen to connected with government officials to directly transgenders, and they provide the rights in Pakistan because we know that transgender that are human and they have lots of rights. So that's why we have worked to the government. So they government provide their rights. So we provide the jobs, government jobs, and me and Noreen lots of struggle for transgenders, and now lots of transgenders are working in hospitals and universities, and they are doing work on government job not right now. So that's why people are thankful to both of you, but we are know that they all blessings of God, we are nothing. So yeah.
That's that global sensibility. I would
Yeah.
say that you two are clearly part of that informal, whatever language you want to use for it, global sense movement. I hope that we can get more organized, be more effective, yeah,
Thank
better funded. So there are,
Thank you.
for me, I have like a section in the book that talks about Middle East history, and Payne, for example, talked about the history of Jewish royalty, and he put forward the idea that he was like building an argument for Christians. He wasn't a Christian himself, but he was building forward the idea that that the Jews were first had when they left Egypt had a republic. They had Sanhedrin assemblies, and they elected their representatives, they elected their judges, and they had the first early republic. This was about 500 years before Greece, and then they decided they wanted a king like everybody else. And shortly thereafter, they had generational kings. Syria took over northern Israel. The Chaldean Babylonian Empire took over Judea, or took over Judah. Yeah, I'm actually named for my grandfather, our great grandfather, but not that place. But so he's saying that because they switched from democracy to a king, God had no more favor for them, and so they lost their country. So that's an interesting argument.
That's very nice, very nice. It's so
Wow.
energetic.
And that's covered in the book, Judah?
Yeah, that's a section of the book.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I had something surface here, I mean, just a moment ago. Let me see exactly what it is. Okay, I'm being told to talk a little bit about how I created the book.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
After I left the Moonies, I went through a period of a lot of journaling and writing and emerged with a book that came up with the idea of authority addiction. The idea of alpha male rule, that clarity came later. But I thought I had a history making bestseller. And this was right after Jonestown. And all the publishers said, sorry, we're glutted. Yeah, so went in the drawer. Years later, I was involved with John Denver's group in Colorado, the Windstar Foundation up in Aspen Snowmass, and met a lot of global thinkers like Buckminster Fuller and others, and Barbara Marx Hubbard, and that really got me thinking about the idea of how much is up to me to govern myself better than I was doing. So I was working on a book called Global Sense. No, excuse me, it was called Self-Rule was the name of the book, just simply Self-Rule. And did a lot of interviews with famous people, which if I can get my act together, I'm going to take those recordings and digitize them and put them on my Substack. But this is, that influenced my thinking. So that's where a lot of the ideas in the current book were germinated. And then in 2021, the U.S. reaction to, and the world reaction actually, to the bombing of the World Trade Center in 9/11, I saw the profound shift to autocratic government. I saw a lot of our rights and liberties being deprived. Patriot Acts are still in the book, sadly, and are still being used, still being enforced. Many of these violate our Constitution, in my judgment, but they haven't been adjudicated. But so that prompted me to write a book called, that I very closely copied Paine's Common Sense, and like almost line for line, the first edition of it, and then the book evolved from there. That came from an essay I'd written in '87, calling for network democracy, that also used Paine's Common Sense, and that was actually the start of my first website. If you want to have a hoot, go to media-visions.com. That's my archive. Before I learned how to do modern WordPress. It's an HTML site. A little bit of WordPress at the end, but you can drill down and find stuff that I was writing in the 70s and 80s and 90s mostly. But so when that book didn't fly, I came forward with the global sense. Well, it did fly. I actually got on Book TV with it and other things, sold thousands of copies of it. But I guess what changed it was when I went through cancer starting in 2016, I realized that same book was no longer true for me. There's a lot of insights around living and dying, about what matters in life, about what it means to be me, that really had to go into the book. And so although the core ideas have continued, they found better expression, in my judgment, and the anecdotes and the stories, the memoirs, now has that whole deeper personal level. And there's a sub-theme in there of facing death. There's a sub-theme in there of health issues, of taking personal responsibility for ego, Yeah, yeah, and because it's been the book has evolved as I've evolved, and evolving me has evolved the book, and evolving the book has evolved me. It's interactive. So that's probably why I need to share that. So you heard that. I tend to balance reason and intuition, reason and conscience.
Yeah, we recently
More
heard
questions.
from well, I don't know, a coach that encourages people to write their own book. And she made the point that you're making is that the process itself is more important for one's individual growth than the product, that the end product.
Yeah,
The end product may be of great help to a few people or a few million people, but a part of that is the process of one's story. I just pulled up network democracy here on your media-visions.com. There's some pretty primitive website structure there.
yeah, it really is.
It's
I
great.
like the graphic I found.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean
Of
that
I
was like my
can the
first.
planet king. I can the planet king.
Yeah, that's internet domain. That's Internet Corporation for domain names and numbers.
Ah,
And
okay. Well, I have a
that's
question for
really
you.
yeah. My concern about that was that as the internet was privatized, all these cyberspace domain names were being treated like Oklahoma land rush. People were registering domain names. Even today, you know, the Kamala Walsh, you remember that? That's an example of a domain squatter who put his title on a domain, hoping someday it would have value. For him, it had value of $15,000. So,
Right.
but you know, but it was like a cybernet, you know, a cyberspace land rush, and so a lot of people's rights were, I felt, being neglected in favor of the people that were running the domain registries.
Yeah.
And their interests, their values.
Yeah. I have a question for you about if you could give some guidance or speak up some of Thomas Paine's advice, if there was some that you've come upon in your many journeys. I made notes about personal democracy. It's easy to complain, but it's empowering to volunteer and be involved. It's important to be vocal. That 20% is speaking for the other 80%. One could say that about voting rates in the United States, that so few are deciding for so many. And what and of course, the more vocal the 20% gets, the more restrictive those that sit in state legislatures and other places that can fight that freedom of voice. And it is going on in spades in the United States, big time. I mean, you know, state legislators saying it's okay if somebody's protesting, you can go ahead and run over them with your car. You're not going to be prosecuted for that. And so where in your journey or Thomas Paine's journey is that can be discouraging when you're volunteering. It can be discouraging when you're being vocal. And so, of course, that's exactly the intent of those that don't want to hear people speak up. Where do you find your strength in speaking up? Where does Thomas Paine find the strength in speaking up? And
Okay, multi layers here. For Paine, what I know of his life story, that he suffered enough abuse from authority in his youth, from his family, from his work, from you know, and he got involved with you know, with politics fairly young, and he saw enough abuse of authority that he really developed a passion about it, and the people around him early on saw that he had writing talent, so he was like used for lobbying and pamphleteering even in the UK before he came to the US. And so he was driven by deism, that sense of connection to nature, and he was driven by a clear commitment to reason, and he saw the stuff that was going on as being just unreasonable and illogical, and saw the atrocities going on as irrational. And he said for continent to control, for continent to be controlled by an island is folly and absurdity. So it came from heartfelt values. He was part of the Enlightenment movement. He was inspired by Locke, Burke, Rousseau, Hume, Kant. Those are the people that he was reading, from what I understand. And so he felt real passion. So that's what drove him. Common sense came out of influence suggested by his friend Benjamin Franklin, who sponsored him coming to the country, and because he met him in London, and then also Dr. Rush in Philadelphia was another one who encouraged him to write Common Sense, because they had these ideas that needed to be expressed, but nobody can find the words for it. And so Paine took these Enlightenment ideals and put them into plain language the average person could express. This is one of the reasons why I think Adams hated him, was jealous of him, and let him rot in prison. It was because Adams for years had been saying a lot of the same ideas in terms of independency is the phrase he used. And but he just, he was writing as a Harvard man and people weren't paying attention. He was writing to his own crowd. The common person wasn't paying attention. And without the public support, how could, that's what made his book successful. That plus the fact that thousands and thousands of copies are printed upon release because two printers got in competition with each other. so Philadelphia, and then it got popularized. So on the personal level, in the history of the book, there's one more piece of history that you need to know, where I find my hope and what drives me to keep going. When I came out of my second surgery in 2016, I was in that twilight state between, where you go through a twilight state for your back and your body. And so I had the realization that I had a choice whether or not to take the next breath. And the question came to me, what's left here on earth for me to do? Is there anything that I really got to do before I go? And as much as I love my wife, my ex-wife, still best friend, what came to me was an image of the book, the title, and and a clear certainty that I had to finish this and get it out in the world before I could go.
Wow.
So,
Very powerful.
so I'm trusting that.
Well, thank you for that answer. Thank you for answering that.
Well, I just have
so-
one question.
And I
of
look
you,
at the
Jeff.
world, and how can I be silent? When I look at the world, how can I be silent?
Yeah.
I just have one question before we close
Yeah.
here. And what kind of world do you think it would be if common sense had been accepted and implemented that long ago?
Well, it was accepted. It made the revolution. There would have been no revolution without the pamphlet.
Well, I mean, some of the
Not
things
if
you
it-
said, term limits, no capital punishment, stuff.
Oh, that's just the beginning. The
Suffrages.
main idea is that people have the core idea of sorry, I didn't make this clear. The core idea of a direct democracy is that presidents do not sign legislation. The people ratify it at the ballot box.
True.
That we, the voters, we, the citizens, have final say. That makes the kings, eliminates the kings, eliminates the autocrats, eliminates those that are driven by ego and power. The 12-step tradition has, the second tradition is what I follow, is that our leaders are trusted servants. They do not govern. They're in charge of administering the choices of the people and doing it well and doing it honestly. And give them all due praise, because that's a rare talent to do it well.
And as close as we come, I think, in the United States to direct democracy that you just described, are those states whose structure believe that the citizens can decide things, like Colorado,
Yes.
where you can petition to change the Constitution and things like that. Not in Tennessee.
Most states have.
We're not smart.
Well,
we're
some
not
states
smart
don't have
enough to do
petitioning.
that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there
Well, that was
are
the
a number of
presumption. That's
states
why
that
we
don't.
have the electoral. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that presumption is why we have the electoral college instead of direct votes of the common people.
Sure.
But yeah, there are states in the USA where you have petitioning. There's other countries that have petitioning. There's also referendums that come from the legislatures that we elect.
Right.
In Colorado, we have both propositions and
Right.
and and petition referendums.
Right.
And sometimes they conflict with each other.
Well, when you're in a state
Often
that does
they
not have the
conflict.
citizen-led ones, it's pretty lopsided. Well, it's very
Yeah,
lopsided.
and because we don't have publicly funded elections, our decision making is warped
Correct.
because people with deep pockets can do massive campaigns and influence public opinion.
Right.
Right.
That's why I'm an advocate of what
That's
I call
why I
deep
wish
media
some of those
literacy.
things had be a part of our, culture.
Yeah,
That would have
and I'd
been,
like to see that
those are
happen.
game changer ideas.
Yeah.
Yes, and if we accept I think the idea of the citizens having the final say is if anything in the book is truly revolutionary, that's probably it.
Mhm.
That's as revolutionary as Paine's idea of forming a democracy in this country.
Yeah.
Well,
And so I've laid out a map. I've made the seed thoughts. I planted the seed thoughts. Will they grow? Curious to see.
I think they
I live
will.
long enough to discover.
We're glad that there are seeds
Glad you
available
stayed on
to
the
us.
planet to plant them, sir. We
Yes,
need more
that's
like this.
correct.
We need more thinkers like you.
That is correct.
Yeah, well,
So,
creating archives as best I can.
amen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for that.
Judah.
We call that the gift to the shift in humanity, and that's yours. Thank you.
Very significant one.
Yeah,
Thank you
well,
for this
I'm still
wonderful.
working on my end of it. I invite everyone to do the same.
Thank you.
Well, I think you're talking to some activists here, so
Yep.
we invite others to join
Hello,
us,
choir.
right? Around the planet. So, Bob, you want to go ahead and wrap it up and we can
Sure.
tell us about what's
Next,
coming up next week? That'd be
before we
wonderful.
before we say our thank yous, next Thursday night's conversationalist is Phil Gruber. He has been on a Thursday night conversation before, and I might mess up a word or two here. The title of his conversation next week is Revelations of the Cosmic Canonic. Am I saying it right, Noel?
Christos.
Christos, the Canonic Christos. The story told the first time of the three Christs. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting Thursday night, as they all are. We'll learn about our origins of the Christ and Antichrist paradigms, of which they're very visual today, the Christ and
What does
Antichrist.
it say is the third
Paradigm.
Christ, I wonder?
So we will
When it's
see.
with Phil, you just never know. He
Yeah,
is
His
he's out there. He's out in the universe.
very cosmic. Yep. Yeah.
He's very cosmic and he's a
So-
wonderful guest.
Yeah, wonderful guest. We look
I'm
forward to having
working on
him
bringing my
back.
spirituality down to earth.
There you go.
True.
There's the activist and
Yeah,
there's
where I
the
can use it.
spiritualist, right?
Right.
I mean,
Maybe.
I've had visions in my way, but I believe that faith without works is not enough.
Yeah.
You gotta pray with your feet.
Yep. Pray with
Yeah, and my hands and my voice. My rough,
meditate in the
scratchy
morning
voice.
and meditate in the morning and kick ass in the afternoon. Whoops, I said it because she said it. Because she said it. So thank you all very much for being with us, Judah. You're a blessing to the planet. You're a blessing to us personally. And thank you for bringing your gift here this evening. To
Thank
be
you
seen
for
by
Thank you.
reintroducing me to Thomas Paine on a much deeper level. Very
Yes.
appreciative of your breadth
Yes,
of
indeed.
knowledge and how deep you went, and also bringing in your personal story.
Thanks.
So
Thank you.
thank you so much, Judah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for those listening now and later.
You bet. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. May peace prevail on earth.
May peace prevail on earth. Thank you.
May peace prevail on earth.